Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of American Groove with myself, Tim Jensen. We got a very special episode for you today because it's something that we don't really talk about here too much at Grunt Style, and it's about our product called Mammoth Sniper Challenge, and it is an incredible 3-day event that is held at Fort Gordon, Georgia, the first of the year, every year, and it really kicks off the shooting competition for all of shooting sports. It's a fantastic 3-day event, rucking, shooting, mental, physical capabilities, always being tested. And joining us today, we have 3 competitors that have completed, and they will be coming back for the 2023, or 2024 rather, event. And so I want to introduce our very special guests. We have 2 female shooters that are the first to ever complete the Mammoth Sniper Challenge. And I want to introduce Shannon and Jennifer to the show, as well as Scott Whitehead, who is an individual that has been participating in Mammoth for quite some time. He is the division champion of the Open Series, which is no longer a thing anymore, but a champion nonetheless. And he's been competing for how many years?
10 years now.
10 years. 10 years in Mammoth.
Quite a run.
Absolutely. And then obviously we have Shannon Bass and Jennifer Lee with us, the 2 females that finished Mammoth in 2023. Fantastic. And we're here to talk about how you guys did it, right? And what is the whole process of getting your mind, your body in position to compete in this 3-day challenge that really tests everything from your mind, your body, to your shooting capabilities. Before we get into all that, let's learn a little bit about everybody. Shannon, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into shooting sports.
Gosh, I got into shooting sports actually because I wanted to spend some time with my husband, was the thought process. And it's funny that that's not how it's worked out. My husband hunts, and we have guns in our house, and both of my sons hunt with him, but I wasn't really comfortable with those firearms. And so I took a class so that I would just be comfortable with the firearms in my house. Learned I loved it.
Yeah.
And then I ended up starting to do some competitive shooting and things like that, which turns out what my husband likes about shooting is sitting in the deer blind by himself. And I don't want to sit in the deer blind by myself.
Sure.
I prefer doing more of the competition piece. And so now we fight for space in the gun safe.
That's fantastic. What is your go-to caliber?
Really right now it's .223 because as the secondary shooter at Mammoth, I am shooting a .223 bolt gun.
Yeah.
And then we also do quite a bit of 2-gun style competitions where we're shooting pistol and ARs. So I think I shoot .223 more than anything else. And we were actually just out shooting this weekend with our ARs, and I made the comment, I don't know if you heard me, I was walking back from the targets and I was like, I love this rifle.
That's fantastic. So, I want to get back to your choice of caliber for the secondary shooter, because I think that's quite fascinating. Jennifer Lee, the second half of the team here, the primary shooter. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into shooting sports.
Yeah, so I really started shooting in early 2020, which was also the worst time to get into this sport. But growing up, we didn't have any firearms in the house. It just wasn't a thing. But I always loved to play things like Soldier and Mission Impossible. Like that was how I entertained myself. So once I grew up and started doing rucking events, this company also offered tactical events. So I decided to give it a try, and it was amazing and everything I ever hoped for. And since then, I've gotten hooked.
Oh, my goodness.
And for precision rifles specifically, we were focused on pistol and rifle originally, AR-15s. But then with encouragement from Scott and some of the GoRuck cadres, we decided to give precision rifle a try. So from March of 2022, we started shooting me with 6mm Creedmoor. And at the time, Scott had been encouraging us to give Mammoth a try because he loved the event. And even before we picked up a precision rifle for the first time, he wanted us to do it because he knew that we loved rucking and that we loved tactical sports, and that the two, would be good for us. But when we were in March, the thought of doing Mammoth less than a year from now, when we were brand new, was crazy. And
then registration opened?
Yep. Yeah, normally the event sells out really, really quickly, but it was still open 2 weeks later, which was, unheard of. So we took it as a sign and signed up and decided to go for 2023. Our original plan was 2024, but
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. Now, what, making the leap from, casual shooting to precision shooting, what were some of the biggest challenges that you were encountering?
yeah, there's a lot more math involved. Technical ability and position building becomes a much bigger thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that is, we'll get into a lot of that, right? Because, yeah, definitely. Scott, my friend, how about yourself?
I started shooting about 12 or 13 years ago. Like Jennifer, I wasn't in a household with a lot of guns around. My father was an auxiliary police officer, but we just never, it was never really just, we weren't hunters. Didn't have any of that. And for my brother's 40th birthday, we decided to go and do some firearms training. We both had a great time, and I have been shooting and competing in everything I could ever since. Started in some USPSA, got into 2-gun, got into 3-gun, and just, I don't know, the logical extension of understanding the firearms more and more and wanting to understand them more and more led me to precision rifle. First time I laid down at 100 yards, I remember thinking, wow, that's a long way. I got to shoot all that way, right? And, and now we're shooting 1,200, 1,400 yards. It's a logical extension, I think, for the people who really love the technical side of a firearm and want to really understand what's going on.
Right.
So that led me to that. And Chris Andrews and I, who is obviously, Chris is now the match director of Mammoth, but Chris Andrews and I were looking for a match we could shoot. And we were both working in NASCAR at the time, traveling 38 weekends a year. So most of our competition season was unavailable to us.
Right.
And we heard about the Mammoth Sniper Challenge, and Chris and I were like, well, it's the one event in the year that we can make with our work schedule, so let's do it. And we dove in completely green, not having any idea of what we were getting ourselves into, and competed for the first time. I think it was 2013. And the rest is history. I haven't missed one since.
That's right. That's right. And as one of the oldest and longest competitors in Mammoth to date, why do you keep doing it?
It gives me something to look forward to all year.
Yeah.
It gives me a reason to not eat dessert at night. It gives me a reason to work out. It gives me a reason to train. It gives me a reason to shoot. It gives me something to really look forward to all year long.
Yeah.
And I shoot plenty of other matches. I love shooting competition. But this one especially has just become, it's a part of my personal challenge to myself to keep fit enough and conditioned enough that I can do that.
Yeah.
And as I get close to 50 years old, that becomes harder and harder every year.
It really does. Absolutely. I've competed at Mammoth, I think twice. And I had a partner, Joe Cayley, and we took 4th in the open division. And that was grueling. That was back where they were holding at Mammoth Caves, Kentucky. And I remember 22 below zero. It was the coldest I could ever remember that I've ever been experienced to. I got frostbite on my toes, couldn't use my fingers. And, we were it was brutal. And I said to myself, I need to own this thing.
I remember that year was didn't get above 10 degrees until Sunday afternoon, as we were rucking back to the award ceremony.
There was a gentleman there that made it to the summit of Everest 2 times and dropped out on the first day because of the coldness, and I believe he had a bit of a heart issue, a cardiac issue.
The hardest part in those conditions is trying to maintain your temperature balance between when you're rucking and when you're not, because it's very easy to overheat yourself. You want to step off for the ruck, you want to be warm, and as soon as you step off, you start sweating underneath all those layers, and then it can take hours to get rid of that sweat. Yeah. So you have to convince yourself it's okay to start the ruck freezing cold. It's 10 below zero and I'm starting in a t-shirt. Yep, that's right. And I'm going to shiver to death for the first half hour, first 10 minutes, right? And then I'm going to start getting warm. But if you don't do that, you will sweat right through your layers and you will never be warm the entire rest of the day. So there's some there's quite a bit of complication of working in that condition.
Yeah. So, these are not new things that you guys have seen, you in the research of Mammoth. What were some of the preparations that you were making before stepping into it, right? You had less than a year to really get yourself into a position of saying, hey, I'm going to compete in the toughest long-range sniper competition in the country. and we don't know what we're doing. Like, what was going on through your minds? How are you getting prepared?
We just jumped in with both feet. We listened to a lot of podcasts, and one of them is Chris Way's podcast, and one of his episodes spoke to me a lot, and it was about make the goal, meaning everything needs to be focused on this huge goal.
Yeah.
And so the example I use a lot of is we both have some interest in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We did not pursue that during the time frame where we were studying or, training up for Mammoth, because that would have been really distracting, right, from what the goal was, is to take on this completely new thing. So everything we did was in service of this goal of finishing Mammoth.
That's beautiful, actually. Like, really prioritizing everything
Yes.
and saying, hey, there's a lot of distraction here that is going to keep me from achieving what we're setting out to do.
Right. So we identified 3 big categories of we got to get gear together. There's a ton of gear choices, and Scott was amazingly helpful at working with us on gear lists and what to think about. And then we got to practice the shooting. So we read books, we listened to podcasts, we talked to mentors, we spent a lot of time shooting. Yeah. And then there's the rucking piece, right? The 50 pounds of gear and rifle is pretty significant percentage of our body weight. And so we worked all summer and fall just to get really acclimated to that weight so that we were ready to step off and not feel like that was a really big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jennifer, I'd love to hear some insights on your end and mentally, right? Just becoming, it's a question of fortitude, right? Especially when you're the second day in, you're 17, 20 miles into the competition. What were you doing to prepare your mind for this competition?
Yeah, you really have to stay focused throughout the training process. It's a grind. It takes a lot of grit to have the dedication to wake up each morning, figure out what you need to train for among the rucking and the gear prep and the shooting, and then to dedicate that time to it and reschedule other things if needed. And then during the event itself, the event really tests your ability to focus, decide what priorities are and what you need to do right then. Yeah. So we had a plan going into each stage. After we would finish a ruck, we would use a restroom, get something to eat to boost our sugar levels. We would get our gear ready. It might involve getting updated environmental data to know how we would need to adjust our shooting. We would listen to the stage brief, ask good questions, take lots of detailed notes. Because with Mammoth, something that's unique about that event is that there are often very specific instructions about target sequences, the number of hits you have to make, the rules of engagement, and that can make or break your event sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Mammoth. Really, the day one of Mammoth will set the tone of the weekend's competition, right? When you're seeing 30 to 40% of the field drop on day one, what is going through your minds that next morning when you're reading, okay, we just lost a third of the competition? Like, as that competitor, like when I competed, it's like, holy hell, like am I going to be able to finish this, right? And I was getting my own anxiety from that, like really questioning, my inner self, like, man, like there's some really rock hard people out here that are far more capable than I am, and they're falling out. Am I going to be able to finish it? What was going through your head on day 2?
Yeah, I think our secret was that we stayed focused on what we could control and didn't really let outside factors like how fast others were rucking or, what they were doing shooting wise impact us. We just had a plan, we stuck to it, and that's what led us to success.
Absolutely. You just got to be focused on what you're doing, and you can't be influenced by other people and their situation. It's just not that kind of a competition.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott?
Yeah, no, I when I hear that people are dropping, to me, my brain just goes, good, that's that many fewer people I got to beat.
As the old veteran. Right.
Ultimately, Mammoth is a shooting competition. The rucks are done in such a way that they're pass-fail. You either meet the standard or you don't. The trick is to meet the standard with using up as little of your endurance and your constitution as you can, maintaining as much focus as you can. So when you step into that stage, you still have the mindfulness that's required to be competitive.
Yeah.
This would be a very different competition if all we had to do was stick 50 pounds on your back and ruck 30 miles in 3 days. What you need to do is do that and still maintain all of your awareness and all of the thought process and the mental toughness to now go into a mentally taxing situation. And when you talk about stage briefs that have different target sequences, you know, I've heard people refer to that as just a game and all the silly gamesmanship that happens. What it really is it's putting you in a situation that is mentally taxing you as much as it's physically taxing you. They're going to give you things that are going to distract you. They're going to put you off your game. You've got to maybe remember the sequence of numbers. Maybe you've got to hit the targets in just the right sequence, but that is all a distraction. And the catch is to do all that correctly and still have the mental process you need to make the engagements that you need to make.
Yeah.
And that's the purpose of that. It's kind of a simulation of fog of war. There's so much going on that you just have to focus on what you need to focus on and still execute the task.
Yeah, that's a great summation, really, of the program itself. You know, I look at Mammoth as a series of challenges within the total, right? And within those challenges, it is like, you know, when I'm looking at primary versus secondary shooter, what calibers I'm always wanting to do, what points am I willing to give up? You know, knowing that most of the field are not pistol shooters, right? But there's some great points I can make on pistol. What do I want to give up in terms of long range that I can still pick up here in the pistol side? Or, hey, maybe I need to ruck a little bit harder on stage 7 because I want to jockey for first shooting rights on that stage because that's going to put me in a position to do this for stage 9, right? And it's all of that big, complex gaming, if you will, of the total package and really how you're maneuvering through that. And the people that understand it, really do well in the competition, right? And even down to like your loadouts, your packing, right? I know that Scott, probably one of the most meticulous individuals when it comes to packing, and I would imagine that's due to your engineering background.
Yeah, as an engineer, I have to quantify everything, and I have to make all those decisions. And when we talk about preparation, this is my packing list. It includes everything down to the pair of socks and the pair of underwear that I stepped off in. And it allows me to make decisions about what I'm carrying and how much I'm carrying.
And why is that important?
Weight is every ounce I need to carry is an ounce I need to carry for 30 miles.
Right. And not only 30 miles.
Through the stages.
Right. And like if there was a time, right, if you might remember this, is like if you were on a shooting stage and a strap touched the ground off your backpack, eliminated.
Yep.
Right. And those are tough periods, right?
Yeah.
But these are all the things that you're having to think about when you're doing Mammoth, right? It's not just I'm gonna go walk 30 miles. I'm gonna shoot, right? This could be a fun little adventure. No, ma'am, no, sir.
And all of those mental challenges are just meant to distract you from the task at hand.
Yeah.
That's why they're there. They're there to just force you to focus on what you need to focus on, and it's really what makes Mammoth what it is that mental challenge.
Now, what are some of the things that that you've learned over the years that you're willing to give up when it comes to packing? Like I see a lot of individuals that will do, they'll sacrifice their sleeping gear, right, and just kind of do like a quick little pitch, all right, and they freeze their ass.
You've got to be comfortable. You've got to rest at night.
Yeah.
I don't sleep particularly well in a tent, but that rest is still important. You don't want to be cold overnight. And that takes a few pounds to do that. A good sleeping bag and a good tent, to me, is weight you have to spend. And that's how I think of it. I think of it in terms of how much pain does this bring me, right? I also think it's very important to bring some food that you will absolutely love while you eat it. For me, that's chocolate, right? And you say, well, you're bringing a pound of chocolate almonds. Yeah, I am. But that changes my mindset, right? When I eat that revives me a little bit, right? And I love what Shannon said about part of her stage process being to eat something, because you have to eat something. The tendency is to not eat enough through these competitions. And by day 3, you're dragging. By day 3, your body's just in reserve mode and you're just not getting it done. You have to be eating. You have to use some sugar to maintain that mental acuity, but also that physical endurance.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's throughout a packing list, there's all sorts of lessons learned. There's some tough decisions that are made. And there's times when I got out in the field and wish I hadn't made the decision I did.
Yeah.
But you got to make them, and then you got 3 days to live with them.
That's right. Jennifer, what would you do different in your loadout with 1 year under your belt?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a lot that we would have changed because we already kind of cut everything down to the bare minimum. Like we might bring a second laser rangefinder. Another different thing about the Mammoth Sniper Challenge is that you don't know where all the targets are ahead of time, and you also don't know the distances in most stages. So you're having to find and range and build positions and engage all on the clock. So having that second one would help us save a little bit of time if we're willing to take on the extra weight.
Yeah. We made tough choices. We elected, for example, not to bring a tripod. We had all of our weights and back and forth, and we rucked with all of the gear for a couple of months. We had our packs ready, and we tested them, and we were making tough choices, and the tripod didn't come. That was not a problem this year. There were some stages where it might have been nice, but there was not a place where it was 100% necessary. But to your point earlier, we were willing to sacrifice those points to say, we're going to get rid of this 4 pounds, which is a ton in the weight that we're talking about. So
we also had contingency plans. So if we did need more height to see over vegetation, we plan to use our packs or maybe use each other to shoot off of. Like everything.
And we practiced all of that.
Right, yeah. So like every piece of gear you bring, you have to be very intentional about, but you can also think about how it can be multi-purpose. A pack is more than just a container to hold your items. You can also use it as a prop.
Yeah, and I've seen some very interesting shooting positions at Mammoth. My gosh, like I look at, there's been some head scratchers, and there's been some like, wow, I never would have thought of that. But in my opinion, as an observer, casual observer and a part-time participant, has been your shooting position is the most important thing that you can be doing in Mammoth, right? Because all of the other things are just pretty standard. But if 3 minutes is a long time. If you really think about it, like you can do a lot in 3 minutes, and that's the general average of time on stage. But people will fumble through that 3 minutes mostly because they are not setting their shooting position, and they know it. They walk off the line and they say, "You know what? I should have spent a little bit more time spent building my position." I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it, mostly from you two as the first-time shooters, and then Scott, your opinions on what you've done over the years to understand building positions and how to capitalize on it.
I think one of the best lessons that we learned that Jennifer employed during the competition was, if you've built a poor position, fix it. We worked with Andy Slade quite a bit, and he made us practice that. And on one of the stages, you had to shoot from a defined area. And of course, because we're humans, we set up in the middle of the defined area. And Jennifer figured out that she needed to go to the far left side of that defined area to get a better angle on the targets. And so on the clock, she picked up and she moved, and she was able to get some hits. And so knowing when you need to move is, I think, a huge skill. And I was super excited that she had the mental, capacity and knowledge to say, yeah, I need to make this happen.
Yeah, that's a fantastic example, right? Because, say a large amount of people will just fail when it comes to that. They're too busy looking at the single individual thing, and rather than zooming back and saying, oh, look, this isn't working. I'm continuing insanity by staying here.
And what do you move, 10 feet? Like, it wasn't that far,
right.
But it made a really big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've seen a lot of competitors get stuck in that. They'll lay down at a position and they'll say, okay, I've got 5 targets to engage, and I see 4. I see 4. And I see 4. And you see them look and look and look, and it's like, get up and move.
Yeah.
Right? Stand up with your binoculars and look. Right? Move to the right, move to the left. As partners, split up, cover different sectors, and then compare notes with each other. The teamwork aspect of this is so important, and I can't emphasize it enough. You have to have a partner who you trust implicitly.
Yep.
Someone who, When they say something, that means that for that moment in time, they are the leader of the show. Because you've got two partners who are equal partners in this, right? Call them primary and secondary. That's really just a caliber restriction rule. That's all it is, right? You have two equal shooters, but any one of them needs to be able to take the leadership role at any moment when they see something. So the ability for one to stand up and go, move to the left, right? And that second person can't hesitate.
Yeah.
Got it. That moment, you're taking a leadership position. You tell me to move left, I'm going to move left.
Yeah.
Right? And it just, you have to have a trust in your partner. You have to have faith in them. And you have to be able to communicate perfectly. So, from a positional standpoint, a lot of the training becomes train with the gear you have, the gear you're going to bring. But from a teamwork perspective, the training becomes have faith in your partner. Learn your partner's strengths and weaknesses, learn yours, and make sure the two of you communicate effectively.
Yeah.
Joe and I used to go to ranges without our rifles. And we would just go and start talking through the range. What do you see? I see berm number 1, 2, and 3. We're going to call that alpha 1, alpha 2. We're going to call that left side, right side, creek 1, this, right stone. What would you call that? What would you call that? How do you refer to this? What do you think this distance is, right? And you spend time standing next to somebody and talking through that range after range. It doesn't matter if you have a gun. It doesn't matter if there's targets out there.
Yeah.
You get this understanding of how you see the range, and then you trust them, and then you can back and forth trade that leadership role back and forth throughout the stage. And that's really important.
It really is, because in past years there was a stage called no comms where the teams had to really use hand signals or whatever method of communication that was nonverbal. And that was a really challenging stage for 99% of all the shooters, right? You would see systematic breakdown of those teams right in front of your eyes, and you're like, man, and you're wanting to help them, right?
Yeah.
And that's another thing about Mammoth. We're not spending a lot of time to set people up for failure, right? This is a competition that is, when you take that step back and you remove all the stress out of it, it's a very easy competition, right? But when you're introducing all the stressors and teamwork starts breaking down, communication starts breaking down, you really are, can see, how teams operate in combat environments, right? And that's a simulation of what we're trying to accomplish here, and what fog of war will really do to an individual in the high stress environments. And that's one of the most fantastic things I like watching about Mammoth is just seeing how people are reacting to the environment that we're creating. And Chris has done a monumental job of creating these circumstances, these positions, and they're extraordinarily challenging, right? But at the same time, if you take that step back, it's quite simple, right? And it comes into the stage briefings, and I want to spend a little bit of time on stage briefings because that's another area that I see that people will just break down. Right? Is that they go through the stage briefing, they hear it, they're taking notes, they're very studious, right? Oh yeah, they'll ask all the questions. But the minute they're on the line, it's like they never listened to what was going on.
I call it buzzer inoculation. And that's one thing that any competition, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a shooting competition, although I think that's a great way to do it. You have to have that buzzer not impact you, because there's plenty of people who get stupid the minute that buzzer rings, right? And that's that start of your time. Some people just stress out. The more you can compete in other forms, in any other timed competition, but especially shooting sports, the more you do that, the more that buzzer rings and you go, okay, now it's my time to go. Right? Because that's all it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to add 20 to your heart rate. It shouldn't.
Right?
Because all that's going to do is make all that mental stuff that you rehearsed, all that mental stuff that you wrote down, just makes it go right out the window. Right? But absolutely, that notepad that you take to the line is super important. Extremely important.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges you guys faced, listening to the stage briefings and then applicating it at the firing line?
We definitely worked together as a team on this, meaning we both took the notes, we both listened to the brief as if we were there by ourselves, right? So that we were seeking to both have an understanding. And mostly we did really well with this overall, but we each had a stage where, you're supposed to shoot left to right or right to left, and we did that wrong, and we're able to correct the other. And that was really helpful, just to know that you had that teammate that you could completely trust, that when she yelled out to me, like, no, you're supposed to go right to left, I was like, oh, yeah. And so I was easily able just to move my point of aim and get on the right target. Yeah. So it was great to be able to do that together, because by yourself, it's still just tons of information that you're trying to assimilate and take action on.
Very good.
And that's a great example of another thing with the teamwork. Always be working. Both team members always be working, right? And sometimes that working is just observing, but you need to do it actively, right? So if she's shooting and she's shooting the wrong sequence and she's phased out because she's just, oh, okay, I got to wait another 20 seconds before I've got to do what I've got to do, right? Then she's no help to her.
Yep.
But if she calls that out, she just got the team 5 points.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden she can correct her shooting order. That's working. That's being active. It might be ranging, might be finding targets, might be moving into position, might be building a position, or it could just be making sure that the plan is being executed properly and communicating it. It's constant communication. And like I've told these ladies, always be talking. Always be talking. And if you're not sure what to say the thing you just said and say it again.
Yeah.
Right? Or say it in a different way. Make sure the person understands. Make sure the two of you are together, because you have to be together. So that's an awesome example of just that. Always be working, always be helping and interactive in the process.
Well, we were constantly talking to one another about everything, right? Like, hey, I'll go grab the water. Can you jam some mags, right? Like, just constantly working together to say, these are our priorities at work. And we got to get all that done before we sit. And we would see other teams, arrive after the rucks and just flop down on the ground. And, we weren't about that.
Yeah.
We were about, we got priorities at work.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to shift gears a little bit here and, talk a little bit about, your experiences as coming into this event, knowing that no females have completed this event. What was going through your mind? What was some of the things that you were thinking about individually, as a team? What did you? What were you? Yeah, well, let's just take it there.
Yeah, so we did a lot of research going into this event. We read as many AARs as possible. We reached out to past competitors to get their input on what typically tripped people up, whether it was rucking times or, NDs or other DQ issues. And we did what we could to mitigate those risks. Like when we were finished with the stage, we would talk each other through all the proper clearing procedures to make sure that we didn't have any issues there. And, with the rucks, we had a pace plan and we stuck with it. If the rucks were 2 miles or more, we would target a 15-minute per mile pace to give ourselves some buffer in case we ran into any issues like dropping an item or rolling an ankle or going through a hill that we didn't anticipate. Yeah. And then for shorter rucks, we had to have more of a buffer to account for the smaller margin that we had to work with.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, and I told Scott this very early in our preparation process. I said, I don't want to go in as an all-female team and suck.
Yes, that would be bad.
Right? But we weren't trying to win, obviously. That wasn't what was in our sights. It was in our sights to finish.
Yeah.
And Andy Slade was talking to us about gear one day and what to take and what not to take. And he said, guys, what's the goal here? And as we continued on that conversation, we really walked away with the goal is to finish.
Yeah.
And that helped us to do things like leave the tripod at home.
Right.
To work on our pistol skills, like you mentioned earlier. Let's get those pistol points.
Yeah.
Right? We know we're slower because we're newer at building great positions. There's no positions to build at pistol. Right. So let's just shoot the targets.
Right.
So it was a lot about planning and preparation and knowing where we could make those points. And just going in and keeping our heads down as an all-female team too. Like we weren't out there talking about that during the match, right? We just wanted to go and do the work and do the work competently and finish.
Yeah, and it's great. We've had so many female teams that have come through Mammoth. Have you guys reached out to them and talked to them? Like, what's going on? What'd you do here? Blah blah blah. What were some of the feedback that you got?
We reached out to one of the all-female teams that has competed and came painfully close to completing the event, and just had a little bit of a back and forth on text with one of the members of that team. And that was really nice to say there is a female component to precision rifle shooting. There are a lot of amazing women doing PRS that we watched their videos, and we watched their videos together on Instagram and stuff, and be like, look how she's doing this. And so there are women doing amazing things in precision rifle. And so it feels great to be part of that community.
Yeah. And that's another aspect of Mammoth that I really enjoy. And it's not necessarily Mammoth. I think it's just shooting sports in general. I've never really had a bad experience. In PRS, I was a PRS shooter. In the Mammoth side, did a lot of different things, but I've never really come across anybody that, or any environment where people are not overly helpful, where if you're struggling on the line, like you walk off the line, someone's going to come and pick you up and be like, hey, here's what I saw. Here's how you can make a little bit of a difference in maybe, chambering, or the way you're sighting in when you put your face on glass when you get down in the position, all those different things. And I think you see it a lot in Mammoth during the competition, like more so than I've seen it anywhere else. Is there are people on the last day, right? I think is one of the most beautiful things that I love about Mammoth is it's the last hike. You got to get to that finish line, right? And it is a brutal hike of the entire 3-day event. That one's the one that's going to test your limits. But as people are coming across, you have to finish that as a team. And if they've lost their teammate, they'll drop their pack and they'll run back a mile to pick that person up and make sure that they cross the finish line. And I've seen it to where individuals have dropped their pack to go get other members that are not even on their team. They're not even in their squad to get them to cross the finish line, because Mammoth is a competition at the end of the day, but it's also an achievement. Like, can I achieve something of this magnitude? What are your thoughts on that? You've been around.
The precision rifle community is great. The Mammoth community is great. And when I say the Mammoth community, there's all of those team matches just present that sort of that teamwork, that environment where there is a lot of sharing of information. At the same time, there's some pretty strict rules at Mammoth. One of them is that all the stages are blind. So you don't get to watch other people shoot a stage. When that buzzer goes off and you round the corner around that building or around whatever they have set up to block the stage from you, and you turn around that corner, that's the first time you have ever seen that shooting position or those targets, and the clock is already running. So there is a limitation to how much support you can provide other teams in that regard, because you're not watching other teams shoot. But there is absolutely the conversation that goes on before and after stages about how those things go. The other thing is you cannot support any team with equipment or anything. If I give them a Band-Aid, we're disqualified and they're disqualified. Yeah. You have to bring everything you need. You have to do your own preparation. So there is a great community spirit at the end of this match when people come across that line and flop down on that grass. It's a great feeling. Everybody just enjoys hanging out and just that feeling of being completed. You're right. I mean, we've gone back and helped people who had already, frankly, failed the ruck.
Yeah.
Time was up. But you run back and get them anyway, because they still need to cross that line.
Yeah.
But there's still limitations. As you said, it's still a team competition.
Yeah, absolutely.
And something that struck me on the last ruck was just the diversity of people that were out there. There were old and young, newbies in the shooting sports, and veterans, male and female, and we were all just out getting after it, and it was just something that I really liked about that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really cool. Like you have all the flags lined up. It's like a little alley that you have to pass through, full of people cheering you on. Like, I've never experienced that aspect of Mammoth, and it has to be amazing. As you're rounding that corner, you're like, "Where's all these people at the finish line? All right, let's get after it!" Right, and you're making that sprint to get across the finish line, not to get a better position by any means. You're sprinting because now you have a fire in your belly, and you've got that energy again. Like, wow, those people are here for us, to cheering us on. That's got to be an incredible feeling
when you hear it before you see it.
Yeah.
So the way the road curved,
after you come off of that sand,
and then the road curves and you start to see a bunch of cars. And so I think I said, like, we got to be close. Like, there's a bunch of people here, right? And because we have been rucking just lonely hills for 7 miles. Right. So you see the cars, and then you start to hear the people cheering, and it really, like, I think I looked at you and I was like, we actually did this. Because it is a really great moment with all those people there and the energy that provides. And that 7 Mile Ruck it's a beast, right? There's a lot of hills on that last bit, and you do all the silly things to distract yourself. We spent probably a half mile talking about a really tall guy that had his rifle in a T across his pack, and he was so tall that Jennifer could walk next to him under his rifle
without having to dump
And so we spent a long time like talking about whether it was possible, and then she did it, and it was just this whole distraction of just moving over that distance.
I wanted to go back for a second to what Andy had told them, which is that, you know, to determine that goal, and that goal was to finish. And Andy Slade, who is owner of Rifleman's Path Training, himself a prior winner of the Mammoth Sniper Challenge, is an extraordinary trainer. But that idea of this is your goal, and I love the fact that they came in 2023. Their original goal was to come in 2024, and we kept talking about it, and I kept saying, like, just the way you're going to learn this the most is to just come out and do it.
Yeah.
Yes, your goal has to be a little more conservative the first time. Yes, your expectations need to be tempered just a little bit more. But come out and do it. Come out and try it. Come out and challenge yourself. Find out what you need to work on, right? Because they were going to spend another year training, and they were going to honestly know more about the competition. They will just be a little bit more trained up. Now they actually have a focus to their training. They know what they need to work on, know what they didn't do well the previous year. I love that goal for new teams. Just come out, give it a shot. Find out what you need to work on. Find out where your gaps of training are. By all means, work with someone who's run the competition and who's familiar with it and can focus that training a little bit, but you just have to go out and do it. And I think that goes for so many things in life. That's more than just my Mammoth Sniper Challenge. Yeah. You were talking about jiu-jitsu, right? Whatever it is that piques your interest, go do it. Go throw yourself into it. Yeah. Fail. Learn. Yeah. Fail forward. Fail forward.
One of my favorite things to do, right? Just, you know, I say in business all the time, I have more failures than I have successes. But from those failures comes great learnings. You know, one other thing that I'm starting to see in the Mammoth community is, you know, things that like what you are doing, where you're mentoring new shooters coming into the space. That is such an incredible thing to see that. One, there's so many people that are wanting to get into the precision long-range shooting. I think that's fantastic. Two, people are wanting to explicitly come into Mammoth and test their themselves. Mm-hmm. But there are people, and I don't think that there are people who are doing this for monetary gain. I think that they're generally wanting to go and help other people be successful within these matches. You know, and a lot of these are previous champions that are mentoring these young people, these first time shooters coming in. You know, I'd love to hear some feedback from you, because you've obviously mentored this team here.
And I had a great time doing it. There's plenty of other experienced competitors. Sean Murphy and Greg Hamilton, for instance, won, I think it's 3 in a row.
Yes, right? and they said they no longer will do it anymore.
Talk about being at the tip of the mountain, right? I mean, they're outstanding competitors, and they are doing that as well. They offer classes specifically for, competing in these kind of matches. I get so much out of it just because I enjoy doing it. When we met, when I was getting ready for probably my 4th Mammoth, and they were in a Go Ruck crew that I just decided I was like, if I'm going to ruck, I might as well build some relationships and ruck with some people. Yeah. And I kept telling them about it and talking about it, and they thought I was crazy because I had a big wood 4x4 in an Eberly stock pack to simulate the weight of a rifle, right? Because I didn't know what people were going to think if I came with a rifle. And they're like, "What are you doing?" And you know, to bring them in, to explain to them the competition, why I like it, and then to see them doing it is awesome. Yeah. So for me, it's just the reward of seeing somebody challenge themselves and succeed. I had no question they were going to succeed. Yeah. I've rucked with both of these ladies, and there've been plenty of times when I've been dragging, and I'm like, okay, I can't look slow here. I gotta pick it up, yeah. Right? I mean, the grit these two have is unquestionable, and that's what you need. You need to during the ruck, you need to be looking down at your feet and going 1 foot in front of the other. I just got to do it one more time. Yep. Okay, now one more time. Okay, now one more time.
I'm going to fail tomorrow.
You'll make it to the end.
Yeah, that's it.
And Tim, it's been amazing. In the last 2 weeks, I had a conversation with a woman who is interested in competing in Mammoth. And I think because we've been, thanks to you guys, to some extent pretty public with our story, this woman felt comfortable reaching out to me, and I don't know her. I didn't.
Yeah.
And we had an hour-long call about what it takes and shared some of the same topics that we're discussing right here. But it's cool to be in that space where maybe other women are going to feel comfortable reaching out to us to consider doing Mammoth.
And that was going to be my next question to the both of you is, what would you say to anybody that's interested in, they've looked at all the Mammoth material, they're sitting there saying, I just don't know. What would you say to those people that are on the fence that are wanting to get in this competition?
Yeah, I would say that you can do it. Everyone has unique strengths. Like, from the face of it, no one would expect that we would be, really into precision rifle shooting and somewhat competent at it. But we thought about, how we could capitalize on our rucking endurance and pistol shooting and ability to methodically approach each stage and focus on what had to be done.
People can do it. I mean, I would suggest you train.
Training for Mammoth.
But with training and reach out, there's so many resources out there, whether it's a book, whether it's a podcast. There's some amazing podcasts out there, whether it's a paid class, and we've taken a lot of those too. So there's just all kinds of resources to get people ready.
And I'll give a great shout out to Shooter's Mindset. That is a great podcast for anybody that's out there looking. If you're looking for a podcast to listen to about all things precision rifle shooting, check out Shooter's Mindset. It's a great content. Scott, you're on that show a lot.
Absolutely.
They've covered Mammoth for years. Incredible crew over there.
Yep, absolutely. They've done a lot for the shooting sports.
Yep. As we're wrapping up the episode here, let's talk about some memorable moments from your time out in this past iteration. What are some of the most memorable moments that you two had experienced on your time in the field?
So on day 2, we were at our last 2 stages. There was one area for those 2. And we had just come off of a rough stage where we had some gear issues and had trouble ranging and getting our targets. And, after each stage, we would have an AAR period where we would talk through what we could have done better so that, it wasn't for nothing. We could improve for our next stage. So having that mental resilience to bounce back from that bad experience and then go to the next stage and really crush it was awesome.
Yeah.
That next stage was one where there were moving targets from marathon targets, and those were a lot of fun to shoot. Oh, yeah. And it also involved the simul shoot where we had to work together to count down and shoot our targets at the same time to get points. And we also saw the bonus sniper head that we got to hit for extra points.
Well, it was a clean house on that one.
That was a really fun stage, and we communicated so well on that stage. And like she said, coming off a stage that had not been our best was actually our worst stage. So coming off our worst stage and turning around and having our best stage where we communicated really well, and we were about to do the simul shot, and she saw the sniper, so we ranged that. She shot that. We went back, and then we got the movers, and so that was super, super fun.
Yeah, you're gonna have highs and lows through an event this long, and having the ability to bounce back from the tough times is what will make you successful.
That's a great point. You got to cut loose. That the last stage you shot is gone, done. Put it out. And
right.
You got horizons on ahead of you, and you got to be focused there. That's a very important point. Scott, you guys came into this past iteration of Mammoth with a story. We had Joe Burdick and with an injury.
Yeah, we both had injuries going in this year, and my doctor said I shouldn't go, and I went anyway. And I paid the price. I had a torn hamstring, and on the very first stage, I took my very first sprinting step and tore the hamstring right off the bone. Just clean right off the bone. Did 20 more miles in 2 more days that way. But that was where it was going to end. Last ruck of the second day, I think we failed by 4 or 5 seconds. We both had injuries. He had a knee injury, and I had the hamstring, and we just, it is what it is. We've had other failures. We've had years where we went in. I think we were in a couple of years ago. We were second overall. Going into the third day, we laid down to what is a high point stage, just a flat range kind of stage. We just could not get the wind, and I think, and we just every team that we were competing with just yarded us. Just, they were doing 17 out of 20 and we were low single digits. I don't remember what the number was. And we got, we had like 4 teams hopscotch us in one stage.
Yeah.
The failures are memorable, but the victories are too. A couple of years ago, Joe and I were first place in the regular division. That was a division that no longer exists, but that was certainly memorable. We'll always have a connection with Joe Burdick for that. Remember all those moments when we've gone into stages and executed them perfectly, right down to the times when I've had huge blisters and Joe's been the one to tape them up for me.
Yeah.
Teamwork, it is about the team. It is about the person you're competing with. Great competition experience. So many memories, and they're all really valuable.
Absolutely. And I got to say with a little bit of bias, you're one of my favorite teams to watch. You Team Vortex, you and Joe. And I say that because whenever I see you, you guys are always smiling. You're always bumping around and in positive spirits. Joe's always got his radio going.
Yep.
And that to me just speaks loudly of character and disposition, right? That you're in even the most suckiest of environments, like you have 2 individuals that are just on top of the world, and and that positivity spreads. Everybody, every squad that you guys have been in that I've ever seen has benefited from that positivity, and that is something that I think all of any competitor should be thinking about: is how do you keep that positivity going in the most shittiest of environments, to say the least.
It is, and it's challenging. I want to plug one other thing. Nick Laufenberg from Vortex actually wrote a great book called The Precision Marksman, and it's an excellent book about learning all those skills you need for the precision rifle, and it's a great resource for someone who's looking to get involved. And that's just reading books like that, podcasts, working with mentors. All those things go together to train someone up. But again, just dive into it. Just go out and do it. And you may fail the first time, but you will learn more than you will ever learn spending 12 months at home trying to train on your own.
Absolutely. And Vortex has been an incredible partner of the Mammoth Sniper Challenge for many, many years now, about going on 6 years. So been a great partner. And it's a great book. Nick is an incredible human, dedicated to shooting sports. He's probably single-handedly one of the most influential business representatives in the shooting sports that continues to make huge investments in keeping these things going.
Yeah. Couldn't do it without good sponsors.
That's right. Absolutely. Now, ladies, 2024 right around the corner.
Yeah.
We are 21 days away from today.
We'll be ready.
The recording of this podcast, 21 days out from open registration, July 14th, 2023, 9 a.m. Central Time. What is your plan? What are you guys thinking about 2024?
The computer will be open. The website will be prepped. We will be registered for 2024. We're excited. We want to go, and I think our goal is to just do a little bit faster rifle build and breaks, right? Like if we can do that, if we can just get there faster and find more targets, we'll move up in the standings. And that's really what our focus is. Keep the pistol points high and just get a few more rifle.
Yeah,
we could.
We surprised ourselves even in 2023. Like our goal was to not be, well, first of all, it was to finish and then not be very last. And once the results were posted, as usual, we started looking from the bottom of the page and work our way up because that's where we typically land. And we couldn't find ourselves. And then we went up to the top page and found ourselves on the bottom of the top page. And it was a nice surprise to come in 49th.
Yeah.
So we
I
want to
looked at her and I said, we're on the first page.
That is a feat, right? You're talking about 100 teams. You are 51 teams better, right? Congratulations on that, Ed. And I hope to see you guys place better this year, right?
Yeah,
well, not better, but higher on the challenges. It's I'm excited to see it. Scott, will you be participating this year?
I'll be back.
You'll be back. Hamstring injury and all. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is this episode of American Grit, Mammoth Sniper Challenge, sponsored by Vortex Optics, January 7th through the 10th, 2024. You're going to want to go to g3dynamics.com to register for this event if you're interested, or if you want to learn more, go there. It has everything that you need to understand what the Mammoth Sniper Challenge is. We're excited to see you. Make sure that you have your website open or the URL open, because this thing goes fast. We only take 100 teams every year, and generally we are selling out within 24 to 48 hours. So be fast with the clicking. All right. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again very soon.